My son raised his glass and said, "We didn't expect you, Dad." Laughter flickered around the table, but it didn't last, only silence stayed. I stood there, holding the card I'd signed with love in a box wrapped in red foil. Then the waiter dropped the bill. My name was on it. He'd already signed everything in my place. If my name was already his, why invite me at all? Backhand index pointing right. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where you're watching from right now. No one asked where I went when I left the table. The morning after Christmas Eve didn't smell like cinnamon or coffee. It smelled like drywall dust and someone else's perfume. I stood in the hallway watching my son's wife adjust throw pillows that weren't there last week. A new family photo hung over the fireplace. I wasn't in it. They must have taken it earlier in December, when I was out of town visiting my brother in Nevada. Down the hall, the laughter of children echoed faintly, then stopped. "Don't bother Grandpa," she said, her voice low but sharp enough to reach my ears. The door closed. I stayed still. My hand reached for the card I had left on the small foyer table. Still sealed. Unopened. Its corner now curled slightly, the edge catching the sunlight like something slowly withering. I moved into the kitchen, hoping to find my old mug. Instead, a new cabinet system had replaced the one I built with my own hands 20 years ago. Dark wood. Stainless handles. Sleek. Cold. My mug, blue with a crack near the rim, was gone. "She wants it modern," my son said behind me. He didn't flinch. He had that same calm confidence he wore the day he asked for help with the down payment. The old stuff had to go. So did I? I asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't be like that." "Like what?" "Like someone who doesn't understand how families evolve." That word, evolve, hit harder than any insult could have. He was rewriting the story. I was the dinosaur who didn't adapt. The fixture that didn't fit the new furniture. "I didn't know you were remodeling," I said. I kept my voice steady, though my stomach churned. "We're not just remodeling, Dad. We're upgrading." You should have seen how surprised the kids were when the playrooms started going up. Playroom. In the attic. The one I insulated myself back in '04, hoping to make it a study when I retired. I always thought that space would hold my books, my maps, my little radio, maybe a telescope for the grandkids when they were older. Now it was being filled with bean bags and Wi-Fi boosters. "I wasn't told," I said quietly. He gave a shrug. "Didn't think you'd care. You've been distant. Vegas trips. Solo Christmas plans." I came back. I brought gifts. I looked toward the foyer. "That card." He turned, followed my eyes. "Oh. Yeah. We didn't get around to opening everything." I walked toward it. Picked it up. The seal was still intact. The edges faintly yellowed. I turned it over, hoping maybe it had moved, maybe someone had tried. But no. Untouched. In that moment, something shifted inside me. Not just hurt. Not even confusion. Suspicion. That card had been the only thing I brought with genuine joy. I'd written it weeks in advance. A small message in my own handwriting, with a check folded inside, not a large amount, just enough to say I care, not control. But that care hadn't even been acknowledged. That's when I noticed something strange. On the dining table lay a folder, red, with gold trim. My eyes narrowed. I opened it. Blueprints. Not just for the attic. For the whole house. Walls removed. Garage extended. Master bedroom relocated to where mine used to be. There were notes in the margins. Furniture placements. Lighting adjustments. One corner said, Dad section equals rentable? I didn't realize my son had come up behind me. You weren't supposed to see that yet. I turned slowly. What does that mean? He glanced down at the blueprints, then at the floor. It's just a planning doc. Nothing finalized. You marked off my bedroom. You labeled it rentable. My voice cracked on the last word. It's just a draft. Look, real estate's changing. We need to think ahead. Space is space. You've got your benefits, your pension. You're monetizing my existence. He didn't deny it. He just said, it's not personal. And somehow, that made it worse. I didn't argue. Didn't scream. I folded the blueprints slowly, carefully. Slid them back into the folder like a man burying a body. Then I walked to the foyer again. Picked up the card. Still sealed. Still meaningless. I opened the door. The cold air hit my face like a slap. Snow had begun falling again, light, dry flakes landing on the porch railing. I didn't put on my coat. I didn't grab my keys. I just walked. Past the hedges I'd trimmed for 30 years. Past the mailbox I had repainted every winter. I walked until my legs ached. No one came after me. No one asked where I was going. No one asked where I'd been. And when I returned hours later, numb, quiet, holding the card still unopened, my stocking had been taken down. They hadn't just evolved. They'd replaced me. How long had they been rehearsing my exit? The banker didn't blink when my son lied. 2 days after Christmas, I was sitting in the passenger seat of my own truck, watching my son text as we pulled into the parking lot of Old Mill Savings and Loan. He said it would be 10 minutes tops, just a few papers to clean up the inheritance stuff. No warning. No explanation. He parked in a spot labeled Client of the Month. They know me here, he grinned. You'll just need to sign where I tell you. I stared at him. What are these papers? Tax forms. Trust adjustment. The lawyer said if we don't do it now, there'll be penalties later. And you need my signature. He smiled again. This time, less like a son and more like a salesman. Only because it's still technically in your name. After this, everything runs smoother. I stepped out of the truck, but my legs felt heavy. Something about the way he said technically stayed in my head like a thorn. Inside, the bank smelled of peppermint and printer toner. The manager's office had been redecorated since I was last here, no more wood paneling, just sterile grays and soft jazz playing overhead. I recognized the clerk at the counter. She used to ask about my wife. Today, she didn't meet my eyes. We sat with the manager, Mr. Blakely. A younger man now, fresh haircut, gold tie clip. Mr. Mason, he said with a smile too wide, so glad you could make it. Your son's done all the heavy lifting. We just need a final confirmation from you. My son slid a document in front of me. Multiple pages, tabbed for signature. The title read, Property Reallocation and Asset Management Transfer. I looked up. This isn't a tax form. My son's voice was smooth. Dad, this is standard. We're trying to protect your assets. From probate. From government fingers. It's all legal. I didn't move. That's when he leaned in, dropped his voice. You know your memory's not what it used to be. That thing you forgot at Thanksgiving, remember? Let's not make this hard. Then he turned to the banker. Dad's been a little forgetful lately, he said with a knowing chuckle. That's why I've been handling the financial stuff. Mr. Blakely nodded slowly. Of course. Happens to all of us. No hesitation. No concern. Just a nod. The room shrank. I looked around, expecting someone, anyone, to interrupt. But the banker didn't even flinch. He was already pulling out a notary stamp. I looked down at the pages. The Christmas card came to mind, still unopened, still sealed, still meaningless. And now this, another document with my name on it, asking for my trust in the same man who couldn't be bothered to open a damn envelope. "I'd like to read this first," I said. "Dad," my son hissed, "we've gone over this. Come on." I stood up. "No. You went over this." I was never part of the conversation. The banker cleared his throat. "If you'd prefer to consult your attorney." "I would." That's when my son's tone snapped. "Are you really going to drag this out? We're trying to help you. But if you want to start a mess, fine. Just remember what it looks like when someone your age suddenly backs out of legal agreements. People ask questions." I met his eyes. "So let them." I walked out of that office with nothing but my wallet and my pride. He stayed behind. I could hear him raising his voice as the door closed. Outside, the wind hit hard. Snow had begun again, soft flakes landing on my jacket. Across the street, Mrs. Keller was walking her dog. She saw me leaving the bank and gave a hesitant wave. She tilted her head like she wanted to ask, but didn't. I nodded politely, kept walking. A few blocks later, I realized I'd left the truck behind. I didn't care. I walked past the hardware store, the church bulletin board, the park bench where I used to sit with my granddaughter and feed squirrels. Everywhere I looked, I saw pieces of my life, but no place where I was welcome anymore. Later that evening, I found the Christmas card. Not in the foyer. Not on the kitchen table. In the back seat of my son's truck. Face down. Still sealed. A coffee stain at the corner. No one had even bothered to bring it inside. I held it in my hand for a long time. It felt heavier now. Like it meant something, but not what I had intended. I didn't rip it. Not yet. But the crease where it had been pressed under a booster seat felt like a wound. Card left behind, stained, still sealed, a metaphor for the father's position in the family, present but ignored. My son rehearsed lies, and the banker applauded the act. What else had they rehearsed behind my back? $70,000 vanished, with my name attached. The next morning, I logged into my bank portal. My hands hesitated over the keyboard, like my body already knew what I didn't want to see. 2 withdrawals stood out. Large ones. Labeled equity cash refinance. Same date. Same routing number. One line was for $70,000. The other was for pre-construction deposits. I sat back. Air left my lungs like I'd been punched in the chest. I hadn't signed anything. Not knowingly. I clicked deeper, opened the PDF summary. At the bottom, under Authorized Parties, my name was there, scrawled in pixel-perfect ink. Digitally signed. 3 weeks ago. While I was in Nevada. I called the bank immediately. I tried to stay calm. "Sir," the woman said, "we have record of e-signature confirmation, timestamped, with your account login." I didn't sign it. A pause. "Do you recall sharing access with anyone? A family member, perhaps?" Family. That word made something in my jaw twitch. "Yes," I said slowly. "But not for this." She lowered her voice. "Then you'll need to file a fraud report. But I'll be honest, Mr. Mason, it's hard to prove intent when the beneficiary is your next of kin." I hung up before I lost my temper. I called my lawyer next. Vince. Known him since college. Semi-retired but sharp as ever. "This kind of thing is murky," he said. "Was there coercion? I wasn't even in the same state." "Then it might be fraud. Or constructive consent. Depends how the court reads the context." Context? Yeah. Elder cases are tough. If they say you generally agreed in past conversations, it muddies things. He paused. You got witnesses? Paper trail? Anything that shows this was behind your back? I looked at the card on my desk. Still sealed. I hadn't opened it since retrieving it from the truck. Its corner still bore that circular brown stain from someone's coffee cup. I've got silence, I said. Is that enough? He sighed. No. But it's a damn good start. That afternoon, I didn't go downstairs when they called for dinner. I stayed in my room. The lights off. Just the glow of my laptop and the numbers blinking at me. Later, someone knocked on my door. A soft voice followed. Grandpa? I opened the door to see my grandson, Ethan. 7 years old. Missing front tooth. He held a crayon drawing. Our family, all smiling. My face was half-colored. Mom says we're going to Disneyland. Is that because we're rich now? I knelt down slowly. My knees creaked more than usual. What makes you say that, buddy? He leaned in. Whispered like it was a secret. Daddy said we used Grandpa's magic house money. My chest burned. I smiled gently and ruffled his hair. That's not magic, Ethan. That's theft. He blinked. What's theft? Something you never have to learn, if you stay honest. He nodded like he understood, but I knew he didn't. He handed me the drawing, then ran off. I looked down at it. Everyone smiling. Even me. A lie in crayon. I placed it next to the card on my desk. Later that night, I opened the envelope for the first time. The inside was simple. A generic holiday greeting. But I had tucked a check inside, $2,000. Just enough for them to do something nice. A trip. A small cushion. It was still there. Untouched. But there was something else. A handwritten note, never read, proud of you, son. No matter where life takes us, you'll always have my support. I read it twice. Then tore it in half. Clean, down the middle. I didn't cry. But my hand shook for an hour afterward. The next day, I went to the library to print out copies of the mortgage documents. Highlighted my name. Highlighted the dates. Created a folder labeled, Unauthorized Transactions. Vince said to start a timeline. Start documenting. Build my own paper trail. I went back to the truck that evening. Dug around the glove box. Found a receipt for a contractor, same date as the refinance. Another one for a custom-built stairlift system, attic conversion. He hadn't just stolen from me. He'd planned the heist to the day. The card, once a gesture of love, is now physically torn, mirroring the severing of trust. The check inside becomes a metaphor for both dignity and manipulation. They didn't just take my money. They used my love to authorize it. What else had they bought, by selling my name? My wedding photo was gone. I came home from the courthouse to find hammering upstairs. Sharp, rhythmic. Not the kind of creaking you chalk up to a settling house. I paused at the foot of the stairs, heart thudding. Drywall dust drifted down in soft flurries. I hadn't approved any work. I hadn't even been asked. The attic door was open, ladder dropped down, light on. Hello? I called. Footsteps above. Then a familiar voice, Tommy, the neighborhood contractor. Just us, Mr. Mason, he shouted. Finishing the drop ceiling today. I climbed up. The room that once held old maps, trunks, my Navy box, it was gutted. Insulation removed. A new partition wall half built. Color swatches taped to beams. A child's mural sketched in pencil across the south wall, dolphins, sun, blue sky. "What's this?" I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted. Tommy paused, confused. "Playroom remodel. Full conversion. Didn't your son mention it?" I shook my head. "He didn't." Tommy scratched his beard. "Huh. That's weird. He said you approved it last month. Even showed me the permit." "What permit?" He pulled out a folded copy from his clipboard and handed it to me. The signature at the bottom wasn't mine. But it was my name. Permit ID, M. Mason. Authorized signature, Michael R. Mason. Date, 3 weeks ago. Again, when I was in Nevada. I climbed down slowly, fists clenched. Called the city office. The clerk on the phone confirmed the document was approved under shared ownership. Both names were on the title, Mr. Mason, she said. He submitted under community family zoning. That gives either party temporary authority. And he used that to gut the attic? Well, it's within the threshold. But if there's a dispute, you'll need to file a separate hold request. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. I went back downstairs. The hallway smelled different. Paint. Lavender. Or maybe some scent diffuser that didn't belong to me. In the living room, I froze. The mantel had changed. My wedding photo, me and my late wife, smiling in sunlight on the Oregon coast, was gone. In its place, a metallic sculpture of a faceless family. Modern. Expensive looking. Cold. I looked around. Other things had shifted. The recliner I favored had been moved aside. A new rug. Throw blankets folded with surgical neatness. The house looked like a showroom. Like a life staged for someone else. And then I heard the laughter. My son and his wife, in the kitchen, giggling. She was showing him paint samples. "Baby blue or sun-washed cream?" she asked. "I like cream. Brighter." "Exactly. It's going to feel like a real home." Real home. As if mine never was. I turned the corner. They both stopped when they saw me. "You gutted the attic," I said. My son looked confused. "I told you we were upgrading." "No. You told the bank I was forgetting things. You told the contractor I approved it. You told the city I was fine with it." He raised his hands. "Look, it's better for everyone. We're thinking long-term." I stepped forward. "Did you think I'd never check the permits? It's legal." "So is betrayal, apparently." His wife stepped in. "You're being dramatic. The attic was wasted space." "And your photo?" "We're just updating the decor." "That photo wasn't decor," I said. "It was my wife." No one spoke. I walked upstairs, slowly, deliberately. Into my room. Closed the door. There, on my nightstand, sat the Christmas card. Torn, taped back together along the seam. A faint fingerprint smudge on the front, someone had handled it. I picked it up. Looked closer. Inside was a new note. Scrawled in a child's handwriting. "Sorry, Grandpa. I didn't know it was yours. I just liked the snowman." I stared at that note for a long time. That night, I placed the card in the small safe I kept under my bed. Reprogrammed the lock. No one else knew the code now. I sat in silence until morning. The card is now reclaimed and protected, moved from rejection to reverence. Its torn seam repaired, its meaning deepening through the child's apology. They were rebuilding the house, but I wasn't in the blueprint. What else had they redesigned without me? Would you keep paying the mortgage if your own child told you they didn't want you around? Let me know in the comments. The envelope had the courthouse seal. 2 days passed with silence in the house, no knocking, no requests, not even a passive-aggressive question about dinner. Just the sound of boots thudding above me as the attic remodel continued. Then came the envelope. Thick. Cream-colored. Certified mail. Stamped with the county seal. I opened it in the hallway, standing beneath the photo they hadn't yet replaced. Inside, a guardianship petition. Filed by my son. His reasoning? Cognitive concern. Irregular behavior. Difficulty managing financial responsibilities. It was dated December 14th. 10 days before Christmas. 10 days before that dinner. 10 days before he smiled and said, "We didn't expect you, Dad." The petition painted me as unstable. Suggested I'd forgotten payments. That I had threatened to mismanage property. That I was vulnerable to manipulation. I gripped the paper so hard the edges bent. I read it 3 times before I could breathe properly again. Downstairs, I could hear my son's wife humming. I walked into the kitchen with the letter in hand. He looked up from his laptop and froze. "You filed this before Christmas?" I said. He stood, hands up. "Dad. Before the dinner. Before the bank. Before the permit. You'd already decided I was done. It's a formality. Nothing's decided yet. You told the court I was a danger to myself. You refused to sign the property papers. You've been forgetting things. You said the year was 2017 last week." I said it sarcastically. He exhaled, loud and dramatic. "Dad, I know this feels bad, but I swear, we just want to protect you. It's about stability." I held up the letter. "No. This is about control." He didn't respond. Just stood there, watching my hand shake. Later that day, I went to church. Not for God. For community. I needed to see faces. I sat in the back pew during the midweek service. The pastor stood at the pulpit reading from Proverbs, "Honor your father and your mother." My stomach twisted. When service ended, people shuffled out, murmuring greetings. But not to me. Not one handshake. Not one "Merry Christmas." Only glances. A few half-smiles. Mostly silence. Then I saw it, on the bulletin board outside the chapel doors. A flyer for the church's Community Elder Care Seminar. And pinned right below it, the Christmas card. Folded, thumbtacked. Crooked. Someone had brought it here. No name. No context. Just sitting there. Forgotten. No one noticed it. Not even the pastor. I didn't touch it. I left it there. Maybe that's what they wanted, to display my words without having to hear them. When I got home that night, there was a message on the machine from a local elder law firm. "Hello Mr. Mason, this is Paula from Jefferson Legal Aid. Your son Michael referred you for preliminary guardianship processing." He referred me. He was building a case while smiling across the dinner table. This wasn't a drift. It was a strategy. The next day, I filed an emergency objection with Vince's help. We submitted an affidavit, requested a delay, and opened a formal investigation into misuse of power of attorney, which I'd never legally signed. Still, the damage was done. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. Neighbors had begun to whisper. At the hardware store, I reached for a snow shovel and heard someone say, "It's sad when they start slipping, especially proud men." At the gas station, the clerk offered to help me count change. At the diner, no one sat at my booth. The fallout had started. And no one knew the truth. They only knew the version my son had written. And the worst part? He'd written it in my name. The card appears publicly for the first time, tacked to a board, reduced to decoration. Its personal value erased, turned into background noise. They didn't just replace my name in ink. They rewrote my story in whispers. Was I now a danger, because I remembered too much? Mortgage service line asked for confirmation. I said no. By now, my house didn't feel like mine. My mug was gone. My chair replaced. My wedding photo boxed up in a closet somewhere, probably labeled old decor. Even the smell had changed, cinnamon air fresheners and whatever diffusers my daughter-in-law insisted on plugging into every wall. But what they hadn't replaced was the mortgage. The next morning, I logged in again. Scheduled payments were still active, funds draining monthly from my private account. Still under my name. I called the mortgage company. A woman named Sharon answered, too cheerful for 8 a.m. Hello, this is Sharon with Madison Mortgage, how can I help? I'd like to cancel the autopay on my account. Certainly. I'll just need your security phrase. I gave it. My wife's name, Elena. The one thing no one else would have thought to use. There was a pause. Then, okay, Mr. Mason. I see your account. Are you looking to pause payments or fully remove authorization? Fully. Another pause. Are you sure? There's a secondary user listed. Michael R. Mason. Remove him. A sharper pause this time. Then typing. Done. That was it. One click. And suddenly, everything started tipping back in my favor. I hung up. Then opened my safe, the one under the bed. Pulled out the card. The torn seam had been repaired carefully, taped from the inside. The crease still showed, but now it looked like something held together on purpose. There was a new note tucked inside. A child's drawing, done in green and red crayon. It was the snowman again. Only this time, it had my name written beneath it. Grandpa's house. No one had told her to do it. And I knew no one had helped her spell it. I stared at that card for a long time. Then added 2 new things to the safe, the latest bank withdrawal receipt, and my wife's DNR. If they wanted to take me down, they'd have to go through every piece of documentation I'd ever loved. That afternoon, I drove into town. Found a free legal advisor through the Veterans Resource Center. An older woman named Jean, who used to work state court fraud cases. She looked at my folder, flipped through everything. This is clean, she said. Your son's playing dirty. Can I fight this? Oh, you'll fight it, she said. But that's not the question. What is? Will you win before they ruin your name? The air between us thickened. Then she leaned forward. You canceled the mortgage, right? I nodded. Good. That's step 1. What's step 2? Freeze everything. Savings. Lines of credit. If they forged your name once, they'll try again. I left her office that day with a list of calls to make, forms to file, and something I hadn't felt in weeks, direction. When I got home, my son was waiting by the garage. You went behind my back, he said. I didn't reply. You canceled the payments? Yes. You're tanking our equity, Dad. My equity, I corrected. He stepped closer. You're making things worse. For who? He opened his mouth, but didn't answer. Instead, he muttered something under his breath and stormed back inside. That night, my granddaughter knocked on my door. She held a mug of cocoa and a pack of marshmallows. Tiny ones. I made this. Mommy said you might be cold. I sat with her on the edge of the bed. She asked about the snowman in her drawing. I told her snowmen only last if someone takes care of them. She looked serious. Then I'll never let him melt. She stayed for 10 minutes. Then left. And when she did, I took the card, now folded carefully, and placed it back inside the safe. Closed it. Entered a new 6-digit code. One they'd never guess. Not a birthday. Not an anniversary. Not even my old Navy ID. This one? The last 6 digits of the mortgage account I had just shut down. The card is now sacred, protected, locked, and upgraded with a child's drawing. It's not a symbol of nostalgia anymore. It's proof. They locked me out, but I held the only key. Let's see how long they last without it. Have you ever had to fight your own family to protect your name? Share your story in the comments. Police lights flickered on the driveway. It happened on a Thursday evening, just after dinner. I was upstairs when I saw the blue and red light strobing against the bedroom curtains. At first, I thought it was the city plow truck, maybe turning around in the driveway. But then I heard the knock. 2 firm raps. Not neighborly. Authoritative. I opened the door to find a young officer standing on the porch, one hand resting on his duty belt. Behind him, my son stood off to the side, arms crossed. His wife was wringing her hands beside the mailbox like she wanted the whole neighborhood to see this moment. "Mr. Mason?" the officer asked. "Yes. Can we speak inside for a moment?" I stepped back, letting him in. The air around him smelled like wet wool and tension. "We received a call about a potential domestic situation," he began. I raised an eyebrow. "Domestic?" There was a report of verbal aggression. Possible endangerment of minors. I stared at him, stunned. "Who called this in?" He hesitated. "Your son and his wife are concerned. They mentioned an incident involving the grandchildren." I looked at the staircase, then back at him. "They said I hurt my grandkids?" No physical contact was alleged. Just a raised voice. Emotional distress. He pulled out a small notepad. "Were you yelling earlier today?" I read a newspaper headline out loud. "That's it." What was the headline? "Mortgage scams targeting elderly homeowners." He blinked. We sat for 10 minutes while he asked questions, took notes, and looked around the room as if expecting to find broken glass or signs of a struggle. "Can I speak to the children?" I asked. "They're not available right now." "Of course not." He closed his notebook and stood. "No action is being taken at this time," he said. "But there will be an incident report filed." I followed him to the door. Outside, my son and his wife were already walking back toward the house next door, her parents' old place they'd been fixing up. They didn't even look at me. The officer paused before getting in his cruiser. "For what it's worth, sir, this doesn't feel right." "It isn't," I said. After he left, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The only sound was the fridge humming and the faint scrape of drywall being sanded upstairs. An hour later, I found my pill organizer moved from its usual spot. I kept my medications on a high shelf in the pantry, away from the grandkids, away from temptation. Blood pressure, cholesterol, a few supplements. I was never sloppy with them. But tonight, half the pills were missing. Not just skipped. Gone. Later that night, I overheard her whispering in the hallway. "He won't even notice. He forgets half the time anyway." That was when I realized, they weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to build a case. A paper trail. A persona. They didn't need to convince me I was unstable. They just needed to convince everyone else. The next morning, I woke up early and walked to the library again. Used the public scanner. Uploaded the police report, the guardianship petition, and a timeline Vince helped me build. I emailed it to Jean at the Veterans Legal Office. Then I walked home, slowly, thinking about every conversation I'd had in that house. Everything recorded in their minds as evidence, not memory. When I reached the porch, a piece of paper was tucked under the welcome mat. I picked it up. It was a photocopy of the Christmas card I had kept locked in the safe. Same handwriting. Same message. But now, a line had been added in bold red marker. Thanks for the house, Dad. Merry Christmas. I looked around. No cars in the driveway. No movement in the windows. They didn't even have the guts to say it to my face. They forged the card, just like they forged the signature. Twisted something sentimental into a joke. I went straight to the safe. Opened it. The original card was still there. Intact. Taped. Whole. I placed the forgery beside it. Side by side. Truth and manipulation. Side by side. The card is now weaponized by the children. Its forgery reflects the ultimate betrayal, turning love into leverage. But the father's protection of the original preserves his truth. They forged the card, because they couldn't erase the message. Would the law believe the liar, or the legacy? The handwriting expert looked up, and said one word, copied. I sat in a small hearing room at the county courthouse, across from my son and his wife. The air was stale, the fluorescent lights too bright. Vince sat beside me, calm as ever, flipping through our files with surgical precision. To their right was a new face, someone they'd brought in last minute, a civil attorney, young, polished, with a tablet in one hand and fake sympathy in the other. Your Honor, she said, we maintain that Mr. Mason, the elder, consented to the refinance and property transfer. His son acted within the boundaries of good faith and family preservation. The judge, gray-bearded, tired-looking, nodded slowly. Then looked at us. Vince stood. We'd like to enter Exhibit E into the record. A forensic handwriting analysis. The courtroom assistant handed over the report. We had both signatures, the original from Mr. Mason, and the refinance authorization, evaluated by a state-certified expert. He paused for effect. The conclusion was clear. He turned to the back of the room. A woman stepped forward. Clean-cut blazer. Tight bun. Glasses. She sat, took the oath, and opened her folder. The digital signature on the refinance, she said, was not produced by the original party. It was created using a replicated stroke pattern from a prior document. This was a copy. The judge raised an eyebrow. A forgery? In layman's terms? Yes. You could feel the shift. The courtroom didn't erupt, it tightened. You could hear clothes rustling, someone clearing their throat, a pen click. I looked at my son. He didn't blink. His wife shifted uncomfortably. Their lawyer asked for a recess. It was denied. Vince didn't let up. Additionally, Your Honor, we'd like to submit Exhibit F, a photograph aired by KTV Channel 6 in their segment Holiday Theft in Suburbia. He clicked the remote. The screen above the courtroom flickered. There, on full display, was the Christmas card, torn, taped, open to show the original note. Proud of you, son, you'll always have my support. Then next to it, the forged version. Thanks for the house, Dad. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. One message came from love. The other came from greed. The reporter's voice echoed faintly over the speakers, a veteran's final holiday gift, manipulated into a weapon against him. No one in the courtroom moved. Then came the whispers. Is that real? His own kid? On Christmas? The judge looked at the screen, then at me. He spoke quietly. Mr. Mason, do you still have the original card? I reached into my coat pocket. Pulled it out. Unfolded it slowly. Passed it across. He took it gently. Studied the seam. The tape. The handwriting. Then set it down with care, like something fragile. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he turned to my son. Do you deny authoring the red-marked version? My son didn't answer. The silence said everything. After the hearing adjourned, I stepped outside into the marble corridor. Reporters waited near the exit, camera lights flashing. Someone thrust a microphone toward me. Mr. Mason, how long did you suspect the forgery? I didn't stop walking. Another voice asked, what message do you have for other families going through this? I paused only once, to take the card out and show it. This was supposed to say love. They turned it into leverage. That night, the segment aired across 3 counties. Viewers commented online. Thousands of them. Give this man his house, and his dignity. Who does that to their own father? That card says more than the entire hearing. I didn't read them all. I didn't need to. Because by the next morning, the fallout had landed. The bank called, said they were reopening the equity review and launching an internal audit. The contractor pulled his crew from the attic remodel until zoning is clarified. And my neighbors, some of whom hadn't spoken to me in weeks, left baked goods at my door with short notes. We were wrong. We saw the news. We're sorry. Even Mrs. Keller, who hadn't waved since Thanksgiving, brought over a tin of cookies shaped like snowmen. They're not perfect, she said. But they're made with real sugar this time. I smiled, took the tin. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own neighborhood. That evening, I put the card back in the safe. But not before holding it one last time, carefully smoothing the seam. It wasn't just a card anymore. It was evidence. It was history. It was mine. The card becomes central evidence, shown on TV, upheld in court, and recognized by the community. It's not just a symbol of betrayal, it's the proof of the father's truth. A card became my evidence, of everything they tore apart. How many gifts had they wrapped in lies? If someone forged your signature, what would be your first move? Let's talk. The locksmith nodded without a word. The morning after the hearing, I called a locksmith. Not a local one. Someone from 2 towns over. I didn't want gossip. Didn't want anyone tipping them off. The man showed up in an unmarked van, toolbox in hand. He didn't ask many questions. Just looked at the old brass locks and said, "We doing all the doors?" "All of them," I said. "Front, side, garage, basement." He paused. "You want me to rekey the attic entry too?" I nodded. The attic. Their precious remodel. Their future playroom/office/income property. "Reinforce it," I said. "Metal plate if you've got it." He didn't smile. Just said, "You got it." By the end of the hour, every lock turned clean. Every door clicked with a sound I hadn't heard in months. A sound that meant I was the only one with keys. At noon, Vince filed the deed revision. Using the court's fraud finding, we triggered a clause that voided all previous power of attorney forms. The house was now, once again, in my name alone. Their names, erased. At 3:17 p.m., the restraining order was signed. My son and his wife were legally prohibited from entering the property. No contact. No visitation. No redemption. It wasn't spite. It was survival. By 5:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. Blocked number. Voicemail left. His voice, flat and venom-laced, "You're just lonely. You'll come crawling back when it's too quiet." He didn't know silence had become my weapon. I didn't crawl. I made tea. I sat on the front porch and listened to the breeze move through the pine trees. Then I went inside and opened the safe. The Christmas card was still there, beside the original documents, the drawing from my granddaughter, and now, something else. My DNR order. Signed. Witnessed. Notarized. I placed it there myself. People like him think they're owed something at the end. A say in your care. A final pull on your dignity. But I'd seen what that looked like. Nurses waiting on nods from children who'd vanished for years until a deathbed handed them control. I wasn't giving him that. He'd already tried to rewrite my will. Now, he wouldn't even get to speak when it mattered. The card sat beside the will and the DNR, a triangle of legacy that belonged to me, undistorted, untouched. That night, I slept in peace. No hammering. No voices through the vent. No tension in the walls. Just me, and the house I'd built. Around midnight, I walked barefoot into the hallway. The moonlight poured in through the skylight above the staircase. Dust particles floated like silver ghosts. I passed by the guest room. The bed was still made. His old football trophy sat on the shelf, untouched since high school. I could have thrown it out. But I didn't. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. By morning, a letter arrived from the mortgage company. Final confirmation of cancellation. Balance cleared. Equity review opened. Fraud under audit. Everything he'd built on my back, gone. His empire had collapsed, quietly, with the turning of a key. I looked out the window and saw a moving truck in the driveway next door. His in-laws' house. They were carrying boxes. Heavy ones. Maybe they were moving back in. Or maybe, moving out. I didn't ask. I didn't need to know. Because for once, I had something they didn't. Peace. The Christmas card is now enshrined beside the will and DNR, no longer a gift, but a boundary. A clear record of what matters, and who no longer gets a say. The house was mine again, but the silence paid no rent. What is a home without voices? The credit alert came before sunrise. The first email came at 5:12 a.m. Subject line, alert, major account disruption. Then another, card access suspended due to legal hold. I opened my laptop, heart calm, hands steady. The fraud report had hit the system. Every joint account tied to my name, with their fingerprints on it, was now under review. Frozen. Then came the news from Jean at the legal aid office. They opened 4 lines of credit in the past year, she said, scrolling through the screen. 2 of them were used to finance a kitchen remodel. 1 for a landscaping project. All under your guarantee. I already knew that. But hearing it out loud was different. They'll be liable now, she added. Personal liability. Not your estate. Good, I said. By noon, another call came, this one from a local employer. Mr. Mason? This is HR from Pinebrook Elementary. We regret to inform you that after reviewing recent court findings, we've terminated the employment contract for your daughter-in-law, Michelle. I didn't say a word. They filled the silence. Her access to school property is now restricted. We're deeply sorry for what your family's endured. By dusk, my son had changed his voicemail to, please leave a message after the tone. No name. No promise to call back. And no apology. That evening, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find 2 debt collectors, clean suits, thin smiles. We're here for Michael Mason, one said. He doesn't live here anymore. They checked the address. He used this home as a primary residence, the taller one said. He listed this property for verification. I smiled politely. Try the house next door. Or better yet, try county court records. He doesn't even own this sidewalk. They left. But not before handing me a letter, intent to collect, balance due $68,744. I placed it in the fireplace. Lit a match. Watched it curl into ash. Later that week, I walked into the kitchen and found my granddaughter sitting at the table. Crayons spread out, tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. She looked up, smiled. "Hi, Grandpa." "Hey, sweetheart. What are you working on?" She held up the paper. It was a house. Our house. Stick figures outside. A dog. A tree. She pointed at each. "That's me. That's you. That's Grandma, Mom says she's in heaven." I nodded. Then she pointed at the mailbox in the drawing. "I put your card in there," she said proudly. It was taped to the corner of the page, a folded piece of paper with crooked edges. I opened it. It said, in uneven block letters, "To Grandpa. Don't worry, I believe you." I didn't move for a moment. I just stared. Then I placed it beside the real card on the shelf. Not in the safe this time. Not hidden. Just, visible. Real. Unafraid. 2 nights later, I walked out onto the porch. A small group of neighbors stood on the sidewalk, no cameras, no gossip. Just flowers. They approached slowly. Cautiously. Mrs. Keller stepped forward. "We should have said something earlier." She handed me a note. "You deserved better than silence." I nodded. "We all do." They didn't stay long. Just enough to let me know the tide had turned. I didn't say much after they left. Didn't need to. The house was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was restored. The Christmas card reappears as a child's drawing, symbolizing the return of innocence, trust, and emotional clarity. It moves from courtroom evidence to emotional healing. They lost more than money, they lost my name. Could a child forgive their parents, when the parent was right? Diner eyes all turned toward me. I hadn't planned to go. But when Pastor Lee personally called and asked if I'd attend the Veterans Appreciation Breakfast, I heard something different in his voice this time. Not obligation. Not pity. Something closer to repentance. I agreed. The event was held at the town diner, Clark's Place, the same booth style, bottomless coffee, small town icon it had always been. The walls hadn't changed in decades. Neither had the laminated menus. But when I walked in, something was different. The room went quiet. Not awkward silence. Not whispering silence. Just pause. Then someone stood. It was Mrs. Atkins, used to be a substitute teacher. She started clapping. Others followed. Neighbors. Retirees. The postman. Even the teen who once broke my mailbox and never apologized. A slow, rising applause. Not loud. Not explosive. But steady. I didn't wave. Didn't bow. Just walked to the back booth, where Pastor Lee waited with a fresh mug of black coffee and a folder in front of him. As I slid into the seat, he slid the folder across the table. Inside was a certificate. In honor of integrity and community courage, Michael R. Mason. I closed it gently. He spoke quietly. "We all failed you. Some of us sat too long. Others looked away." I sipped my coffee. "I used to think silence was safety," I said. "Turns out, it's just consent, without the paperwork." He nodded. Then gestured toward the far wall, just beside the bulletin board near the restrooms. And there it was. The Christmas card. Laminated. Centered. Framed. Underneath, a small plaque read, "Respect starts at home. Truth ends here." I stared at it for a long time. "It wasn't just a card," I said. "It was everything they pretended to hear, and chose to ignore." "We know that now," he said. Just then, the bell above the door jingled. I didn't need to turn around. I felt it. Their presence. My son and his wife walked in, scanning the room. Conversation halted. They stood awkwardly by the front, waiting for someone to wave them over. No one did. The server looked at them, confused. "Are you waiting for a table?" My son looked at me. His eyes, not defiant anymore. Not smug. Just searching. For what, I don't know. Approval? Forgiveness? A seat? I looked down at the certificate. Then out the window. The snow had started again. They stood there another minute. Then turned around and walked out. The bell jingled again. Conversation resumed. Pastor Lee didn't comment. Neither did I. After breakfast, I took a walk through town. Stopped by the library, the hardware store, the church steps. Everywhere I went, people nodded. Not big gestures. Just small acknowledgments. The kind that matter more than speeches. I sat for a while on the bench outside the grocery store. A father passed with his son, maybe 5 years old. The boy was swinging a lunchbox and humming Jingle Bells. The man nodded at me. "Mr. Mason." I nodded back. The boy looked up. "Who's that?" "Someone who told the truth," the father said. I turned my face toward the sun. Eyes closed. Wind cold. But not lonely. Not anymore. The Christmas card, now laminated and framed publicly in the diner, becomes a community symbol, no longer personal, but moral proof. Its arc from insult to institution is now complete. Applause spoke louder than the family who never did. Would silence finally shame them? The charity officer wept on the phone. I hadn't planned to give it away. But then again, I hadn't planned to be erased either. It started with a quiet afternoon call to a woman named Miranda from the Veterans Relief Housing Trust. She had helped dozens of families, widows, displaced vets, children who needed a second chance. I told her I had a house. "But it's your home," she said gently. I corrected. "Now it's just lumber with echoes." She paused. Then asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes." I didn't want the story to end with them still circling like vultures, waiting for me to get tired, forgetful, or forgiving. No. I wanted the house to mean something again. Not just for me, but in a way they could never rewrite. We filed the transfer paperwork 2 weeks later. The title was officially shifted to the trust. The twist? I requested that the donation deed be filed under a conditional clause. In honor of Michael R. Mason Jr., the lesson of legacy. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't revenge. It was truth with a signature. The story made the local news again. Then the state papers. Then a national segment, "Veteran Donates Home After Surviving Inheritance Scam by Own Family." The reporters loved the twist. The dignity. The reversal. The sting. They asked for a photo of the deed. I sent them one. The card was paper-clipped to the top. Taped. Still scarred. Still whole. When the cameras came to my front yard, I didn't smile. I stood tall. I spoke slow. "I didn't do this to punish anyone," I said. I did it so no one would mistake comfort for love ever again. The footage went viral. One comment read, "He didn't just take back his dignity, he repurposed it." Another, "Now that's how you shut a door, by opening another for someone who deserves it." 3 days after the transfer, a woman arrived on the porch. Young. Exhausted. Single mom of 2. Her husband had died in Afghanistan. She stood holding the keys I'd left in the mailbox, blinking back tears. "This was your house?" she asked. "No," I said. "It's yours now." She stepped inside like it was sacred ground. And maybe it was. Because something holy had happened here. Not in prayer. Not in mercy. But in choice. That evening, I left a final envelope in the mailbox next door, where my son now stayed with his in-laws. No note inside. Just a copy of the deed transfer. And the photo of the card. You said I wasn't expected, I had written on the back. You were right. They didn't knock. Didn't call. But I saw the porch light blink out an hour later. The next morning, I passed a reporter outside the diner. She recognized me, notebook already half out of her pocket. Mr. Mason, if you had one sentence to say to your son, what would it be? I didn't pause. Inheritance is earned. Not inherited. She didn't even write it down. She just whispered, that's perfect. Later that night, I walked past the church and found the pastor lighting candles in the sanctuary. He looked up as I entered. Said nothing. Just pointed to the wall beside the community awards. The card was there now too. Original. Framed. Glass pane clean. Under it, legacy, written in ink. Defended in silence. I stood for a while. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. Because the loudest thing I'd ever said in my life. I had written in cursive. Folded. And taped back together. The Christmas card now transcends family, it's part of the legal deed, the news cycle, the church wall. It's no longer about what was lost, but what was redirected. He didn't just take back his dignity, he repurposed it. Now they inherited nothing, except my story. We were scared, my son whispered. He stood on the porch like a stranger waiting to be let in. No coat. Just a hoodie. Hands shoved into his pockets. Eyes darting from the mailbox to the doormat, like he wasn't sure which one might strike first. Behind him, his wife leaned against the fence, head down. No makeup. No posture. It had been weeks since the deed transfer aired. Since the house changed hands. Since the applause in the diner replaced their names with silence. And now here they were. Not shouting. Not threatening. Begging. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He cleared his throat. Can we talk? I didn't move. I know what we did was wrong. We pushed too far. We let greed. His voice cracked. I waited. He tried again. We thought if we could just get ahead of the taxes, the future, the everything, we could fix it later. You mean once I died? He looked down. Said nothing. His wife stepped forward now, voice thin. We were scared, okay? You were pulling away. You took trips alone. You never talked about the house or what you wanted after. After what? After you were gone. I stared at her. I wasn't gone. My son stepped in again. Dad, we messed up. We got caught up in everything. We lost our heads. I looked at both of them. No, I said. You didn't lose your heads. You lost your character. His eyes welled up, but I didn't flinch. We don't want the house, he said. We don't want money. Just a chance. A chance to what? To make it right. I stepped back, just enough to reveal the foyer. And there, on the entry table, was the card. Not the original. Not the forgery. A new one, drawn by my granddaughter. Bright blue snowman. Green stick arms. A tree. A house. And beneath it, in blocky handwriting. To Grandpa. The real owner. His eyes went to it immediately. He took a step forward. But I raised my hand. Stopped him cold. He stared at the card like it was holy. He reached out, just barely. And I pulled it back. Folded it. And tucked it into my chest pocket. Silence filled the porch. You said I wasn't expected, I said. And now? You're not owed. He nodded slowly. Swallowed hard. Looked like he wanted to fall through the cracks in the wood. His wife didn't speak again. They both turned. Walked away. Not fast. Not slow. Just empty. Later that night, I took the card out of my pocket and placed it on the mantel. The spot where our wedding photo used to sit. Where they'd placed abstract art. Where I'd once been erased. Now it held something real. Not flashy. Not expensive. Just honest. Something earned. I sat in my chair and stared at it for a long time. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like explaining myself. Not to them. Not to anyone. Because dignity doesn't speak. It shows. And the door, once open to thieves in families' clothing, now knew how to stay closed. The granddaughter's new card replaces all others. It becomes the final moral document. The father's silent refusal to hand it over is the emotional gavel drop. You said I wasn't expected. And now? You're not owed. Did they want forgiveness, or access? This Christmas, the lights blinked on, but not for them. The tree went up in the town square on the first Friday of December. Just like it always did. The local paper published a photo the next morning, kids in scarves, an old war vet holding the switch, and beside him, me. Michael Ark, a Mason honored for protecting elder rights, preserving community values. The words weren't mine. But the story was. The new family had settled into the house beautifully. I visited once. Only once. Just long enough to see the laughter echo through the halls again, not the cold tension of silence, not the buzz of remodelers measuring someone else's inheritance. The attic had been painted sky blue. A child's mobile hung from the ceiling, spinning slowly in the sunlight. One of the boys showed me his drawing, stick figures, like my granddaughter's. Grandpa lives in the stars, he said. I nodded. I think he'd like that. He smiled. We put him there. Because he gave us the house. I didn't correct him. Legacy isn't about getting the credit. It's about choosing who you give it to. That evening, I hosted my own small gathering, just a few neighbors, Pastor Lee, Jean from the legal office, and the young woman from the Veterans Trust who now owned the deed. We drank coffee and cider. Shared stories. No drama. No police. No papers to sign. Before dessert, Pastor Lee stood up and said, "There's something you should all see." He gestured to the fireplace mantel. There, in a shadowbox frame, sat 3 items. The original Christmas card, now mended with golden thread through the seam like a Japanese kintsugi plate. Beside it, my do not resuscitate order, not as a declaration of death, but of control. And below them, my final will, signed and notarized. Everything left behind, including remaining savings, now went to causes that aligned with my wife's memory, literacy, veterans housing, and a local scholarship fund for girls studying architecture. No heirs. No bloodlines. Only impact. Pastor Lee read the plaque beneath the frame aloud. This was not a fight for property. It was a fight for the right to mean what you say, and protect what you build. There were no tears. Just nods. And quiet. The good kind. Later that night, I walked out onto the porch. The lights from the square shimmered faintly across the snow. A small hand slipped into mine. My granddaughter. She looked up at me. I like your card better. So do I. She handed me a new one, this year's. Another snowman. This one taller. Standing next to a little girl. And the words. To Grandpa, the real owner. I placed it gently on the table inside. Right beneath the frame. Legacy, layered in paper and pen. Outside, someone walked past the fence. I recognized his shape, even in the dark. My son. He paused. Looked through the slats. Saw the lights inside. Saw the card through the window. But he didn't come closer. Didn't knock. He just stood there, long enough for the cold to reach him. Then he turned. And disappeared into the snow. He left nothing behind. And took nothing with him. But that's how you exit a story you never really honored. The Christmas card becomes sacred history, framed with the will and DNR, repaired with gold thread. A quiet monument to love defended, not exploited. This was not a fight for property. It was a fight for the right to mean what you say, and protect what you build. I wasn't expected, but I left a legacy that can't be refinanced. Have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? If you were this father, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.